How you doing? I'm John. I'm sorry, not John. That was yesterday. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. This is 365 days towards racial change. We're here talking about black issues in America, discussing racism, how black people struggle, get along, compensate, um, there are barriers to participation, peace, um, uh, openly engaging in the system successfully so that we can have uh, experience the same kind of privileged life as our white counterparts. Hard to come by when there's a great array of, of factors against people with black skin. Right? One is the overarching ways white society oppresses and things like that. We can go on about that forever. But there's also internal struggles that black people have to deal with, um, understanding education, being honest and truthful about the pitfalls and the challenges presented to black people in America. Understanding America is not what it what it presents itself to be, what it's taught to us to be in our grade school years, understanding how the education was a way to condition our minds so that when we begin hitting roadblocks and challenges, then our minds are already conditioned to say to ourselves that, oh, that's par for the course. So we can expect that to happen. We can totally uh, accept that as the status quo for black people. That's just the way things are for us, and we need not stay in that space. We need not be victims of that space, and awareness can put us on some secure ground where we can start making traction. Uh, at least if we can stop willingly participating in the racist regime, boy, that'll put us light years ahead of where America has positioned us in its socioeconomic structure, which is at the bottom. Our goal here, we want to be educated, but I'll tell you, I want to see black people have a normal experience uh, having ease of resources, competing equally with the power group, coming out of its some of the dysfunctional pitfalls that blacks kind of are known for. It's drug addiction and alcoholism, and how I've been jammed up with drugs and alcohol, and unfortunately, I'm sober now. But unfortunately, when I see um, when I was in active addiction, I knew, well, when I want to find drugs and things, well, I go to a black neighborhood where I can find crime and illegal behavior. Well, I know where to go. Right? I don't go knocking on the doors of a white gated community to buy crack. Now, granted, there may be drug dealers in there, but that's not right. It's not what was called. I heard the term years ago, an open air market, where people are just on the corner openly selling drugs. I want to see the black community a day when that is an ancient myth for black people. It's possible, but so black people have a responsibility to go on and on about uh, challenges and resources imposed by a powerful power regime, uh, but at least they're not, as far as I know, at least we can make our own choices. We're not slaves compelled to participate in negative dysfunctional behavior, as was like mandated through slavery and things like that. We can choose not to participate and do things to increase and help our community. Further on that note, how is your financial health future, your financial conversation? If you're black, do you understand retirement products and things like that? It's interesting. I'm trying to get a foothold on another plantation. I'm going to do my best to make it my last plantation, but my head's clear, and now it's a purpose. It's serving a purpose, which I didn't take advantage of in some of the other plantations I've been on. But my new and latest plantation has just offered me some resources for retirement things, which I'm in my 50s, right? So I'm not in my early 20s thinking about putting my retirement together, which I was supposed to, which was a good milestone marker. Would have been very wise. But drug addiction had already come in. It's not taught in my family. I just made a lot of poor choices ad infinitum, played into the hands to the power group. So here I am at 52, like, whatever I do, better be low impact for the rest of my life to get a retirement together, or to think about an age where I'm going to be able to settle down and enjoy the fruits of my labor. I'm expecting a big win somewhere between now and when I die. But anyway, they sent me some resources. The idea is, like, you want to start as soon as possible. If you're a young black person, especially you, then do some study, start putting away some money that you don't touch no matter what for 25, 30 years, and watch it grow and hit a critical mass where you can take it easier in your later ages. Get some financial education, some financial health and understanding under your belt. I'm inspired. We're here because of a man named Dr. Claud Anderson, and there's plenty of places you can go to find out and hear black issues talked about and articulated much better than I can, I'm sure. I am not the brightest bulb in the store. I'm the point. I'm the sign that points. You know, you have exit signs or signs that point to brighter lights. I'm the pointer. But and I'm pointing you towards a man named Dr. Claud Anderson. He articulates this stuff excellently. He studied. He's been involved with the communities that we talk about. He's been in government, education, and things like that. Qualified man to articulate these things. He informs our discussion. I've read 3 of his works. I encourage you to get these as well. Black Labor, a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson here on YouTube and Powernomics at powernomics.com. We are going to be in a Black History Reader today, question number 6, if you have the text. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #us2 symbol. You'll find Black women having their community and getting their resources together, supporting one another. Very important. Check out Blag Enough, BLAGGENUF, the Black Facebook experience. If you've got an entrepreneurial mind for business, check out the Black Business School, theblackbusinessschool.com. Tell Dr. Boyce Watkins that Tomlin's Nyback sent you over. Let's see. If you can't find your flavor community here on the World Wide Web, do what I did. Start your own and see where you will go. See where you wind up. And finally, fictional account of slave life in America. A lot of good talking points in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Also, you'll find that book is informed by factual events. So here we are today. Listen, day 304. We're in a Black History Reader. Question number 6. And the question is, are Black Americans more vulnerable to terrorism than other Americans? The answer, I think, is we can just, sometimes I'm hesitant to give an answer or forward an idea, but the answer is yes. And let's talk about some of the reasons why the answer would be yes. You know, if you look at the church shooting, South Carolina a couple years ago, that's a great example, you know, because Black folks were so understanding, so altruistic, you know, so benevolent, always serving and stuff. And these are all good traits that we have, but it tends for us not to have our guard up. And this could be direct a result of the early slave conditioning. The slave had to just live in a passive state mentally, physically, sexually, spiritually, right? For sustenance, community, resources, economics. It all came from the hand of the white slave master. So, you know, those first couple slaves off the boat, you know, understood the oppression, but Blacks get kind of domesticated in a sense, just after a few generations, to see that their hopes and resources, sustenance comes from this abusive white system. And they don't even, a slave might not even consider abuse. You know, they have a sense maybe that something's wrong, but with the mental conditioning going on, there's even a restraint in the mind that this experience is oppressive, even being beaten, being raped, being separated from your family. So that, and along with that, the dependence for food, clothing, right? New pair of clothes once a year, right? Your health, right? You get jammed up, you get bit by a snake, you get your foot crushed, you get some kind of sickness and illness. Well, you know, you just lay there the best you can. Hopefully, Master will send the doctor to get you fixed up. Otherwise, if you live through it, you'll be a little stronger, maybe. That atmosphere of being passive, of being at the mercy of the power, is fertile ground to be manipulated, controlled, to be a target of violence, um, a target of even economic oppression, incarceration, right? Dr. Anderson, in this question, he's talking about the terrorism we know today, of people of a certain faith from a certain place, uh, attacking black people. But terrorism on black people goes all the way back to slavery. You got KKK, Jim Crow, other ways that the power group has um, engaged in terrorism against black folks. So that makes us uh, easy targets, makes the black community vulnerable, right? To see, because on the plantation, when the overseer, slave handler, master snatch somebody out the field, or you hear some wailing up at the big house, you just have the shelter in place, keep working, block it out. When you hear rape, abuse, beatings, and things like that, you've got to, uh, there's no retaliation. You don't call 911. You, you are a passive observer to some of these horrific acts forwarded against your own people, right? So that's another aspect of uh, black people being a fertile target, a viable target for terrorism. Um, our vulnerability is a problem, right? We're hardy people, right? Physically and stuff. You look at sports and stuff. Um, things, activities that require equipment and time, like you get into colder activities, then it's a problem for black people to sustain. Hockey, rock climbing, things like that, right? We associate some survival, camping out, things like that. So that aspect of vulnerability against black people is another issue, right? Most of the, like my white counterparts, right? If I go to their spaces, I'm not going to be surprised to see camping gear, even if it's got dust over it. They've engaged the material. They know like how to do that. You don't see that. I don't see that. And when I go to, if I go to a black house, I don't see camping gear. You'll see electronics, bicycles, and stuff, but nothing to say there's an exposure to nature that if push comes to shove, if we have total economic collapse, then we can at least go out into the woods and get us some game and make it happen, right? Um, that's something lost. Now, I don't have a whole lot of training with that, but I know like my my father's people were engaged that behavior and whatnot. You know, have you ever had muskrat? Right? Right. You ever ate some muskrat? So we can get it down, we'll choke it down and survive some kind of way. But it'll be more of a challenge than our white counterparts. This vulnerability makes us potentially easy targets for terrorism as well. Um, our disunity, our lack of community is another aspect that makes us vulnerable to terrorism. And you think like, you think about any people group, Arab, Hispanic, and on, we know the list, right? Those groups are closed and they have their community, so they have their culture, language. Um, they interact with it because they're loyal to their brand. In most cases, they have land, or if they don't own the land, that their territory is marked. Whereas this is the space, Chinatown, Vietnamese town, bodega, surrounded by a certain culture. These things are pretty consistent across the board as far as what a community is. Contrast that with the neighborhood. Dr. Anderson's big, a couple times through the literature I've read, and some of the videos he'll talk about the distinction where the community is a closed space where that has all the things I just mentioned, where the neighborhood is not. The neighborhood, there's no community economics there. There's no loyalty to raising up the community. The neighborhood is not a marked area. It's just where the people live, right? Black folks. I live in a city undergone, it's slowed down a lot now, but it went through a period of intense gentrification where black people were displaced because while they were in generally a space, they were not a community. So they were easy prey to be priced out, moved out. They did not own the politics, the power, the economics of a geographical area. Therefore, they were easy. We were easy to be moved aside, moved out as white people came in, rebuilt, and everything. Well, and that was another thing too. The community is going to be a place where there's going to be a sense of responsibility to the area in which they're living, and not just relying on outside agencies to take care of infrastructure and aesthetics, things like that. The black people aren't moving en masse, although I live a kind of a sheltered life, and I don't want to um, I don't want to miss that there's there are black organizations doing stuff, right? You can find black people gathering and whatnot. I'm just talking in general. It's hard to find those spaces where black people have this critical mass, and the corner store is owned by a black person, and there's more black leadership and more community stuff going on, like outside of the church, outside of award ceremonies and things like that, the occasional parade. You know, the other groups, Hispanics, Chinese, whatnot, you know, they are always together. We do have, I mean, you have examples of this, maybe kind of prior to the 60s. I'm sure they're out there now, but you think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, Florida, Washington, D.C., some of the places we've talked about in the past that have had great black communities locked in with their own economics, with the territory is marked. The language is English, but the communities are buying goods and services from one another, and there's a lot of overlap. And exchange inside is very internal, right? And that's the good thing. But unfortunately, whites could not stand that level of black independence and prosperity. So those three communities, you had their riots, and they were sacked, and black people were burned alive, murdered, burned out, and stuff like that. So fortunately, we're back. We're in an age where it's highly unlikely for that kind of blatant racism to be successful. Speed of communication, cell phones, everybody's got a camera nowadays. So we really clamp down on a lot of that. Because back then, white folks would say, well, a black person committed a crime and we just lost our minds and sacked the community. Not so today. We've got cell phones and we can see what's the truth now with video and stuff. We've got plenty of homegrown terrorists and terrorism. I mean, we still have white supremacy, KKK. They don't have that overt violent power as they used to in kind of their heyday, but these influences are still there. We don't have to think about terrorism against black people as a man or woman with a bomb vest running into a place, or even a handgun shooting up a place, right? The terrorism can be any kind of oppression in the workplace, right? I'm a victim of racism, but it's a terrorist activity when it's going to cripple my way of life and make my growth and ability to be competitive an issue. I'm actually glad I had that learning experience, because now I know I'm supposed to get properly compensated when I deliver goods and resources. So now I've had that experience. I know what it kind of looks like. So I'm much more aware now. So the problem with us finally is that we blacks have no real plan. Think if the bottom falls out of America and we lose containment on our peace and structure, America's going, the weakest group is going to be thrown under the bus, so to speak. It's going to be find it challenging to get access to resources, or find it a challenge not to be exploited in the land, in the space. Excuse me. And also, another finally, isn't it interesting that blacks, having been treated so poorly, aren't more easily um, radicalized to participate? Now, the one obvious question is what, and which is good because violence never does it. Um, White power is already hyper vigilant and paranoid about black people snapping and being a threat anyway. Uh, so violence never gets it, but it's also a result of the conditioning brought on by slavery to keep black people docile, passive, and ineffective in the land. Yeah, black people are vulnerable, and when we need to be careful not to implode on ourselves and not to be victims of terrorism from the outside. I'm Thomas Nyback. 365 days towards racial change, day 304 out of the way. Thanks for hanging in there. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.